The sky is the limit for these NFL offenses that you may not be thinking about. Now, some are a little bit more obvious. We're going to start with the Houston Texans bloom, but on today's edition of the Audible, it's about thinking of offenses in a different way. And the Houston Texans, well, yeah, we could all see why CJ Stroud could take that next step and the offense sky would be the limit for the Texans.
Yeah, isn't that what they're declaring by trading for Stefon Diggs? They're going for it this year. We know they have a really good set of tackles. Laramie Tunsil, that trade has worked out okay, and Titus Howard, and they've been restocking the interior offensive line. And let's see where this goes. And I think for fantasy football, right now, you're not going to take all. What's the indication here, right? Nico Collins is still a second, third round pick. Stefon Diggs is still a second, third round pick. Tank Dell is still a third, fourth round pick. Hope he recovers from that gunshot wound. Doesn't sound like a big deal. It's impossible for all three of those guys to hit that ADP unless CJ Stroud throws for 6,000 yards. Maybe he will. I mean, he did have some games in the second half of last year that showed it's within the range of outcomes when you add a piece like Stefon Diggs and Tank Dell is healthy. Remember, Tank Dell went down during the season last year. I think it's the most interesting season for Joe Mixon because whatever you think about Joe Mixon and whether Joe Mixon's declining, if defenses are worried about defending these three wide receivers plus Dalton Schultz, and CJ Stroud is a disciplined enough passer in the pocket to keep them at home, then Joe Mixon's going to see light boxes all
Right.
season. And unlike Buffalo's offense, or unlike Philadelphia's offense, or unlike Indianapolis's offense, CJ Stroud's not going to steal 10 or 15 touchdowns at the goal line. So, I mean, could Joe Mixon score 20 touchdowns this year? I think it's possible. I think that's probably the cheapest fifth round pick or so way to put a chip on this offense without having to worry about which receiver is going to go off in which week.
Yeah, and I bet multiple times they go off
Well,
together, and
like San Francisco.
right, right, and it was Nico Collins that said the sky's the limit, and when you talk about Mixon, here's the one thing I think, Bloom, the light boxes, but I also think they're not gonna ask him to do too much other than what he's good at doing.
Yeah. Yeah, just take those light boxes. He's a big, still a powerful running back. Maybe he doesn't have the burst that he had. Maybe he isn't quite the danger in the passing game that he used to be. But sometimes running back is just an accumulation position, especially in good offenses. So Nixon still being treated as a running back dead zone option. And I'll say this, if you really do feel like, oh no, Mixon is done and Houston was very ill advised to trade for him and then give him an extension. I don't know if it's Damian Pierce or you think, well, even Damian Pierce couldn't produce in this offense last year, then what are we even talking about? Somebody is going to get the production in this backfield.
Yeah, somebody's gonna do it, and that passing game's gonna be on point. Now, Bloom, I will do a little would you rather
Mm-hmm.
on today's show. Would you rather have as your top 3 receivers Robert Woods, Noah Brown, John Mechie, or whatever the hell the Patriots are gonna trot
Yeah,
out there? Like,
right,
seriously, and those are their that's the 4th, 5th, and 6th receiver in Houston.
right.
So, yeah, sky's the limit. They're stacked. Let's talk about the Arizona Cardinals. I go back to my conversation with Jonathan Gannon at the coaches' breakfast in Orlando, where he's expressing full confidence. And I'm just enamored by JG. I mean, just a really good dude. And yeah, they're putting their money where their mouth is with Kyler Murray for now. The addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. is fantastic. I happen to really like Michael Wilson as well. And this is one of those offense with Trey McBride. Like you just look at them being loaded on offense. So could the sky be the limit? And are people maybe overlooking pieces? Wilson specifically, maybe McBride a little bit. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be
Right.
overlooking this offense at all, Bloom.
No, you shouldn't. And I think the main player, Cecil, I'm working on a piece called 10 ADPs that don't make sense. Just
Nice.
don't make no sense. And one of them is Kyler Murray. Um, Kyler Murray is still falling to the seventh ish round,
Okay.
quarterback 10 or so. But let's remember, under Cliff Kingsbury, we had Kyler before his knee injury ticketed as a potential elite fantasy quarterback, a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And
Mhm.
I talked about this last week, and I think we're going to tie together Atlanta, Arizona, and Washington. And this is a good time of year just to be starting to lay the groundwork of what do I buy and what do I not buy, right? Cliff Kingsbury with Jayden Daniels. Uh, could it be that even though Cliff always wanted Kyler Murray, that actually Drew Petzing, a Kevin Stefanski disciple, is better for this offense? Because we saw this offense. We thought this. Remember trading for your starting quarterback right before the season, and he doesn't even know the names of his teammates, Joshua Dobbs.
Mm-hmm.
We were expecting a basement level offense, and it wasn't a basement level offense last year. Now, Kyler Murray is ramping his way up. A lot of the things that were working with Joshua Dobbs, they weren't really using those concepts and doing as many of those things with Kyler Murray. But as he got more integrated into the offense, you saw it, little glimmers of, hey, Kyler Murray in this offense can take advantage of things that Cliff Kingsbury wasn't creating for him. Now you have an entire offseason for him to learn this offense, and you also have him 2 years removed from an ACL tear. That's kind of important. Oh, and I think they added a receiver this offseason. I can't remember who it is. But this is a receiver cease. Again, talking about ADPs that don't make sense. This is why Kyler Murray's ADP doesn't make sense. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to cost you an early second round pick right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If he anywhere near lives up to that, that is a massive lift for this passing game. If there's a passing game that's going to be better, and if Kyler Murray is going to be healthier and Drew Petzing is making the offense better, why can you still get Kyler Murray in the 7th round?
All right. And Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm going to bring up two, and I'm going to rhyme because it's that type of day, Bloom.
Yeah,
Zay and Trey. They got Trey
sure.
Benson. So you're worried about what if James Conner's 100 years old and they get banged up? Yeah, they got Trey Benson, who might be
Yeah,
the best running back in this class. I didn't have him as that, but he's up there. And then Zay Jones just signs with this team as well. If he's healthy, and he's their third guy,
right.
pushing Michael Wilson there.
Yeah, and Greg Dortch, the human Dortch, he's finally has opportunity to be a somewhat stable part of this offense. We know he riffs with Kyler Murray. We know that Trey McBride does. I'm a little bit hesitant about Trey McBride. I do think with Trey McBride going in the top 3 tight ends, if I was looking at Trey McBride or Travis Kelce or Trey McBride and Mark Andrews, I might go with the guy that has the long-term track record, because last year McBride didn't have to share targets with. By the time McBride was really a big part of the offense, Marquise Brown was hurt, and the other options on the field, well, I mean, not to knock Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson, but Trey McBride's going to look like a pretty attractive option when those are your top wide receivers. Now, when Marvin Harrison Jr. is a top wide receiver, maybe Trey McBride isn't the first read as often.
I don't want to make Bears fans upset, and I certainly don't want Caleb Williams to get ruined. But if we talk about sky's the limit for offenses that people might be overlooking, Chicago is on the list. I mean, my
Has
God,
to be.
they're
Has to be.
absolutely loaded. They're loaded, and they have a generational talent at quarterback. I hope everything works out with Caleb. I hope the Bears actually do get a franchise quarterback that they can believe in, because the last one they traded to the Steelers. Anyway, I hope it works out. And well, yeah, depending on how the drafts fall, you should have some Bears for sure.
Yeah, and maybe even Caleb Williams. You can get. So I'm looking at quarterback, and I see quality outside of the top 7 or 8. That's usually where you could get Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Dak Prescott. That's another ADP that doesn't make sense. That could
Mm.
be for a different conversation. And then after that, usually you can get Caleb Williams. And again, what we have to keep in mind with Caleb Williams is, unlike any other number 1 overall pick who was taking over the year he was drafted, he's being drafted into an offense that's already built and a team that is already starting to ascend. It's at the bottom of the mountain, but it's not at base camp. It's gotten out of base camp with this offensive line, which was such a problem for many years. Darnell Wright absolutely looks like a keeper at right tackle. Tevin Jenkins didn't work out as a tackle, but he could be a keeper at guard. Braxton Jones looks pretty good. They brought in Ryan Bates this offseason. So, they have some pieces to at least give them a mediocre offensive line. Matt Batanti will be on the couch this month to talk offensive
Nice.
line if you want some hot offensive line talk. But this is important because the offensive line is the foundation of the success. But then you also have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, who has been with Shane Waldron. Also Shane Waldron. Again, I'll repeat this, but this is the stuff we got to keep in mind. What did Shane Waldron do for Geno Smith? as far as getting the best football out of him, as far as putting him in a comfort zone and taking advantage of 3 really good wide receivers they had last year. So all these things are set up for Caleb Williams to not have a bumpy, rocky transition to the NFL, but actually have some things in place that make his job easier. And then some of his talents can come to the forefront, talents outside of structure, the way he got the Patrick Mahomes comparisons. And again, from a fantasy perspective, Cease, I'm thinking about Chicago versus Minnesota, Chicago versus Detroit. I mean, those look like games to me that could easily get to 35, 31, 38, 35 kind of game scripts if this offense is humming.
If the offense is humming and Caleb stays healthy, which leads us to our next team, because we got to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. When we talk about Houston, what happens if CJ Stroud is banged up? What, Case Keenum? All right. Arizona, what is it? Desmond Ritter?
Mm-mm.
Chicago, Tyson Bagent?
Mm.
Well, in Atlanta, they got the guy that could take over and never give the job back. And his name's Michael Penix. The dude can absolutely sling it, and he's just waiting. He's just waiting. We all hope Kirk Cousins. I think the reports now have been super positive about Kirk Cousins. Yeah, fine. And if he plays good football, Falcons
Mm-hmm.
could easily trade him,
Yeah.
and then go forward with Penix. But you have insurance,
Mm-hmm.
Bloom. In fantasy football, how many times can we do that from a quarterback standpoint when 60 quarterbacks played last year and probably 50 of them are no good, everybody? Atlanta, you have the benefit of like, I've invested in Atlanta players and I have the coverage of if Cousins gets banged up, Penix can come in and look as good, if not better.
Yes, absolutely. And the other multiplying factor we're looking for here is Zach Robinson. So, we're going to look at some of these offenses. The Steelers offense, no longer Matt Canada, although it's the guy that we thought was holding back Atlanta. Was it Arthur Smith? Was it the quarterback play? Does it matter if it's better this year? That's what you need to care about for fantasy. So you have Zach Robinson deploying all this talent,
Mm.
Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Darnell Mooney. And remember, Darnell Mooney was coming back from a pretty gnarly ankle injury last year. So, and what is missing, right? If you say, well, I've got Kyle Pitts in the middle of the field, I've got Drake London to win on third down against contested balls and tough coverage, I've got Bijan Robinson to do everything guy out of the backfield. What are we missing? A deep threat. That's Darnell Mooney.
Ding, ding, ding,
So
ding.
that piece, Cease, that Darnell Mooney signing could actually be the most important part of the Atlanta offseason because it makes everything have room to breathe in the running game and in the middle of the field. And it makes them defenses not be able to play single high safeties and have stack boxes against Algier and against, I'm saying Algier because, when Algier's in, that's when you're going to have some more bread and butter running plays. So all of these pieces, and then like you said, Cease, there's no catastrophic floor. If the quarterback gets hurt, it may actually be better. And I'm going to pivot and just tee this up real quickly because I talked about this with Jake Seeley on the couch last week. We do have one offense in the NFL that is an offense where the sky is the limit, but is also the offense where if the quarterback gets hurt, the value of the pieces of the passing game actually goes up. And it goes up if Anthony Richardson gets hurt. He's gotten hurt before. What's his track record on getting injured? Because the backup quarterback there is a guy that in Cleveland last year took his team to the playoffs and made fantasy stars out of the guys that he was throwing the ball to.
Yes, I would save that for another debate because
Yeah.
I think there's something going on with Joe Flacco, but we'll save that for another debate. You did you did make one error, Bloom,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
one.
Mhm.
It was when you said Zach. When you talk about Zach, you have to say Chatfield Chargers, baby.
Chargers baby. That's right. He walked across the stage. Well, he was there when people were walking across the stage at Red Rocks, right?
Yeah, for sure, man, for sure. Zach Robinson. Let's talk about the breaking news from yesterday. Was it Connor Hughes? Who was it that was like they got to cover up for Nathaniel Hackett? They're hoping that Aaron Rodgers covers up for Nathaniel Hackett. Okay, Hackett jokes aside, he's a dancer. Um, the talent is there, and again, in assembling these teams, I wanted to talk about today, Bloom. It was just like looking at the talent. Well, the talent's there with the Jets. Hackett, okay, can Rodgers cover up for him? And how much can you trust that in fantasy football?
I think the most important thing here actually is other than Rodgers' health and state of mind, which I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's a big thorny topic. Is actually the offensive line, and this offseason, the Jets did a lot to give the offensive line a fighting chance of holding up. Um, Now, it's the same script as usual, but instead of it being Mekhi Becton and Dwayne Brown, it's Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. Both of them, from a standpoint of cost, very reasonable. Tyron Smith only is going to cost them if he holds up, and Morgan Moses was a third day draft pick to get a pretty good right tackle. But then the most important thing was, no, they did not draft Brock Bowers. See, do you really believe that the Raiders did a coin flip? Did you see that?
Yeah,
That
I saw that.
Do you believe it?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. My take when I saw that was, well, they were just letting down Terry and Arnold easy. They were just saying, like, we really, really wanted you, and we wanted you so much that we were so flummoxed by this choice that we had to just flip the coin. Anyway, no, it was not Brock Bowers. It was an offensive lineman. We've been hoping for this, right? So now, if either of these guys cannot hold up, you've got Olu Fashanu, who may also be able to play guard in a pinch too. So you have now a plan that if one of these tackles goes down, that doesn't mean the offensive line is going to collapse. So I think that's the key here. And I think you see it reflected, the optimism reflected in Breece Hall going in the middle of the first round. And hey, even without Aaron Rodgers last year, he was really coming on only a year removed from his ACL. So similar to the Kyler Murray talk, well, how good is Breece Hall going to look 2 years removed from an ACL? And Garrett Wilson still, this is your Malik Neighbors comfort, right? Garrett Wilson hasn't done it yet, but has shown enough to make us believe he will, that he is still at the end of the first round, early second round. So there's hope if Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy and this offensive line can stay together. That Hall, I mean, we could be talking about Hall and Wilson as the most valuable running back and the most valuable wide receiver. But the problem is, it's the Jets, so we have a lot of ifs. And once you get to like the second if or the third if, maybe that's not where you want to invest.
Yeah, a lot of ifs and a lot of whiffs. I don't know why I'm rhyming today. To wrap up the show, and no, I'm
Yeah.
not going to talk about Tennessee because I don't believe in Will Levis. Prove me wrong, bro. I do believe in Jayden Daniels. And you talked about Cliff Kingsbury earlier, so we got to talk about Jayden now. Look at the talent around him. Look at how they're going to assemble that Russian attack with Ekeler, of course, as the change of pace back as well. It could be something dynamic because immediately, if we just think about game planning,
Mm-hmm.
how do you game plan against the
Right.
Commanders when they have a quarterback that can beat you a lot of different ways?
And again, I'm going to say this a lot, but I think it's really a fascinating paradigm shift of the way we talk about quarterback prospects. Because Jayden Daniels, the way we talked about him wasn't like, well, Bo Nix, what you can do with him, or Michael Penix, look, it's like left-handed Phillip Rivers, or oh, the improvisational ability of Caleb Williams. No, the conversation about Jayden Daniels was how difficult it is as a defensive coordinator to prepare for him.
Yep.
And if right out of the gate he is making defenses play on their heels, now we got something. And I'm going to mention Malik Neighbors again, because one of the things that you really appreciate about Malik Neighbors' film at LSU is the defensive backs gave him a massive cushion. Massive cushion, because the one thing you didn't want him to do is get past you. And
Right.
he understood how to use that against the defensive back, how to do like a certain step that would cause a defensive back to open up his hips to be able to turn and run. Oh, it's time to turn and run. No, it's not. I'm actually just standing still, and now I'm going to break you down after the catch because I'm also lethal after the catch. So it's understanding that if you put your opponent on their heels mentally before the play even starts, how you can use that against them. So that's Cliff Kingsbury and Jayden Daniels' task for this first offseason, preseason camp, is to understand, hey, you have an advantage already when you're just coming out of the tunnel. The defense is already asking themselves, how are we going to defend Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin and Austin Ekeler? And yeah, you have Brian Robinson running between the tackles, and you have Jayden Daniels and his run threat, where he can turn any scramble into a chunk play. So will Cliff Kingsbury set him up much like Malik Neighbors? Because what's the moral of that Malik Neighbors story? Hey, if the defensive back is ready to open up their hips and run deep to take away at all costs the deep ball, then you have easy 7-yard completions that can turn into long plays because of Malik Neighbors' run after catch ability. Similarly, with Jayden Daniels, you can start him off with easy stuff. with layups because the defense is going to give it to you. And then when the defense tries to adjust with that, that's when you go for the jugular.
Yep. And then when you adjust, he adjusts and he crushes you.
Yeah.
Just stay
Lamentations of
healthy.
the women. Yeah.
Lamentations. What is best in life? That's a wrap for today's program. It is the Audible. We've got 3 channels now at Football Guys, so make sure to subscribe to all of them. Dynasty and, of course, Fantasy Football Show, and, of course, Football Guys Audible. About 50% of our viewers aren't subscribed, so please subscribe. Help us keep
Yeah.
growing the Audible channel, the Audible brand. We certainly appreciate you all for doing that. You can like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. It really helps out the channel, helping out Football Guys. And of course, you want to support the show. We don't do any silly super chats, but we do ask you to check out footballguys.com. Sign up for the free daily newsletter. Bob Harris, Cecil Lammey, third person, Sigmund Bloom, amazing person, Joe Bryant, hell of a coordinary. We all write the takes for you every day to your inbox. It is the Football Guys free daily newsletter. It's available at footballguys.com. And if you like what we do there, then subscribe. Consider subscribing. I know times are tough, but if you can, that really helps out the channel. And it's the way that we support ourselves.
Mhm.
Anyway, so he's Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey showing. I don't know if I'm showing anything yet.
I want
Anyway.
you, show me the way. Wah, 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 wah.
All right. Love will keep us together. That's right. We're groovy. We're grooving on. He's Sig. I'm Cease. Stay tuned and stay frosty.